Is Ukraine officially pivoting its attack from Rodozyne to Robotyne? And what is their strategy in Zaporizhzhia? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's August 16th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, let's take a look at the control map. Notably, the entire town of Rodozyne is officially listed as under Ukrainian control. Russian forces look like they've retreated primarily behind the Morkiidi River here, ceding the entire town to Ukrainian forces. And, this seems to have progressed much more quickly than Ukrainian efforts to take Staromayorsk. So I think this may bode positively for the Ukrainian armed forces attack on Russian logistics and munitions and their ability to keep their troops fed and supplied, right? Generally, a low morale, low under-equipped army may numerically be intact, but oftentimes you'll see them become much more brittle in fights. They just won't have the sort of staying power necessary to really hold out in a defensive fight. Looking over at Robotyne, you can see that Ukrainian forces have been steadily driving Russian forces back over the last maybe 48 hours or so. And we're going to take a look at some reporting that indicates that this pattern has continued. And you can see that it looks like Ukrainian forces are attempting to at least be able to push Robotyne from two sides, right? It's very similar to the playbook when they took Rodozyne, right? Where they took Staromayorsk and then attempted to assault from the front, allowing the troops in Staromayorsk to function as a sort of support by fire position. So something of an innovative strategy, right? Not quite the battles of maneuver, the big sweeping offensives that perhaps NATO was expecting, but this too can be an effective strategy. Occupy a flanking position, a frontal position, and then attrit the enemy and force them out of the urban, or in this case, like ex-urban area. When we look over at the combat map, you can see Russian forces returning to the offensive somewhat, 30 combat engagements across the entire front line. Again, this is indicative to me that Russia's major offensive pushes are probably going to be on pause for a while. Right now, what we're seeing is counterattacks and fixing efforts. Up here, it's probably Russian forces attempting to fix Ukrainian forces in place, though I will say this does appear to be quite close to Kupiansk, and I'm not sure if this is a new development, but I guess probably not. I don't even see. Oh, there's Kupiansk. Yeah, so this is actually a pretty standard. This has been a standard situation on the front line for some time. I guess this map makes it look like they're quite a bit more distant from Kupiansk. Still, you're seeing, at least in the last 2 weeks, Russian forces try to push a little south near Lyman Pershi. But this is primarily, I think, a fixing effort more than any sort of major offensive push. In the south, again, Donetsk City, you're seeing some more, I think, fixing efforts and then counterattacks near Rodozyne. Or actually, this is probably an attack covering a retreat as some Russian forces retreat from their positions. Other Russian forces will attack in order to blunt Ukrainian efforts to conduct pursuit. When we look over at War Mapper, you can see in the last 12 hours, he has a few updates. The first of which is the complete liberation of Rodozyne. And more significantly, that Ukraine has made additional progress to the east and northwest of Robotyne. So you can see here, again, Ukrainian forces trying to really clear out this front line as well as create this eastern flank. And you can see there they've pushed through one major Russian defensive line outside of Robotyne, and it looks like they're going to try to dislodge an additional line here to the south. So again, I think what you're seeing is, in all likelihood, again, an effort to create a front and a flank, and then use that to squeeze and pressure Russian forces in these towns, force them to retreat down an obvious route where, in all likelihood, they'll also be subject to considerable punishing fire. So I think that's the overall strategy. Guys, if you want to see the aftermath of the Battle of Robotyne, I actually did a breakdown on Combat Vet News. In fact, it is pretty graphic. It's so much so that I can't even show you the thumbnail, or else I'll get age restricted. But any one of these tiers is going to get you access to the members only content. It's also the best way to support the channel. As you guys know, I am routinely demonetized. It's hard to get sponsors anymore. Right. War content is just, it's hard. It's a tough niche to be in, but I depend on you guys and your support. So if you want access to those twice weekly members only videos, become a member on combatvetnews.com today. When we look over at the news, there's not a ton. The biggest news, again, is Ukrainian forces effectively liberating a fairly substantial amount of territory. Russia continued to leaning heavily on missile strikes. And what I thought was most interesting is that it seems like Prigozhin is still commenting publicly, but primarily on Wagner issues on the African continent, right? But he's making no comments on the war in Ukraine. This seems like maybe part of the deal was for him to politically stay out of Ukraine as well as militarily stay out of Ukraine. Prigozhin, of course, comments allegedly that protesters wearing Wagner shirts in Ghana were arrested, and that Wagner has continued support around Africa. Anyway, that's all I had for you guys. Thank you so much to our Colonel tier members. I couldn't do this without you guys, as well as a huge thank you to our Lieutenant tier members. Thank all you guys so much, and I will see you all in the next one. Cheers.